Hello, welcome to Retrogaming Network. I'm Zoidberg, and this is the re-review. In this series, I take a look back at my time writing games reviews for Games X and Amiga Action, taking one game at a time and seeing if I agree with my 18-year-old self. Did I score the game accurately, or was I well off the mark? Let's find out together. In this episode, I've tried to find something a little bit ghoulish for the Halloween season, and so I will be taking a new look at the Addams Family, developed and published by Ocean Software in 1992. Everyone who played games on their 8 or 16-bit home computers in the late 80s and early 90s will know the name Ocean Software. They were one of, if not the, most prolific UK publisher of the time, releasing games of all shapes and sizes across all systems, including original titles, flight simulators, arcade conversions, and for the purposes of this video, movie licenses. Whilst in many cases the games themselves were made by other teams and Ocean served as merely the publisher, they had a busy internal development team too. Based in central Manchester, at a location that I was fortunate enough to visit on more than one occasion, thanks to my job, they were responsible for a number of top-selling titles, such as Batman the Movie, Hook, Lethal Weapon and Jurassic Park. Turning a popular film into a platform game was a bit of a cliche by 1992, but that's exactly what Ocean designers did for the Addams Family, although let's be honest, it made more sense here than it did for something like Navy SEALs. While most other makers of platform games of the time turned towards Sonic for their inspiration, this definitely had the look and feel of early Mario games instead. The plot of the film is not an especially memorable one, so the game's designers wisely decided to focus their efforts on the family and their fantastic home instead. The Addams Mansion is a labyrinthine location full of hidden rooms and secret passageways, and it makes for an ideal setting for a game. The Addams Family was released in June 1992, 6 months after the film had come out in the cinema, but just before its release on home video. Remember those? This timing will have certainly contributed to the game's disappointing sales figures, although it was released into a very crowded marketplace at the time, so that probably had an impact too. Let's take a look at my original review and see if this lack of sales meant that gamers missed out on an undiscovered gem, or narrowly missed out on a stinker. My review appeared in issue 34 of Amiga Action from July 1992, a packed issue featuring 35 games reviews and 2 cover discs. I awarded the Addams Family a huge score of 94%, and amazingly there were 2 games that scored higher in the very same issue. The superb Monkey Island 2 earned itself 95% from one of my fellow reviewers, and you can see my thoughts on that game in a previous episode of the re-review. Zool from Gremlin Interactive was the big exclusive review of the issue, with a final score of 96% and a 4-page review. This meant that the Addams Family landed at number 2 on the platform game Super League, just behind the Dimension Hopping Ninja. This was also the issue in a massive facepalm moment, where one of the team managed to give the mighty Sensible Soccer a measly 78%. But we'll just gloss over that one. I praised the simplicity of the controls in the Addams Family, meaning that anybody would be able to pick up and play it, although I also mentioned that it was not an easy game overall. Fortunately, the ability to play through the levels in any order that you want helped to alleviate the difficulty and keep you playing. Despite the tendency to raise your blood pressure a bit, it is, nevertheless, a superb game that everyone should own. Now it's time to boot up the A500 Mini and replay the game, so let's see if that opinion still stands. What instantly makes this better than a lot of platform games on the Amiga is the fact that you have incredibly simple controls, left and right moves, and you just simply press the fire button to jump. No pushing up to jump, as was the bane of many platform games. The only things that you use up on the joystick for on this game are for climbing ladders or going through doorways. And much like the Great Guyana Systems had proved before it got removed from shelves, this does show that the Amiga is more than capable of making a platform game to rival the likes of Mario. One of the wise decisions that the developers of this one made was to make the entire game non-linear, so that you can actually just choose the way that you want to go. You don't have to. These underground caverns levels that I've come to here are probably not the first levels that other people will have played. So it means that if you try one route through the game and find it too difficult, you can actually then go and try a different one. As you can see, if you get a game over message and start a game, you do actually start outside the house. Now, what I did previously was I went right and went to the underground caverns. What you can do instead is you can go through the doorway into the house, into the hallway, and then every single one of these doors here takes you to a different area of the house. So there's Lurch playing the piano. Now, this game did also come out on consoles, particularly, especially the SNES. I definitely played that version. And the big difference that you have between the Amiga version and the SNES version was the number of colours that the console can have on screen at a time. That meant that the SNES version had fully parallax scrolling backgrounds, which this game doesn't have. So what it loses in the visuals are not really important to the game as a whole. Also, what the SNES version had to compete with was being in direct competition with a Mario game, which obviously the Amiga version doesn't have. So this would very much be the Amiga owners' equivalent of Mario. And there were many games that attempted to be that. This is by far the best of the bunch. But if you select continue, it returns you back to the staircase, meaning that you then get to choose a different route through the house. So let's try this way through the garden. Everything that the game's designers have done seems to have been in service of making the game tough, but actually fair at the same time. So if I'm stood on a platform, for instance, and a character comes from underneath, I automatically kill them because I have automatically stomped on their head. And that's the kind of thing that a lot of developers don't think about. So as it should be, every single death that you get in this game is your fault rather than the game's. So it might be because you're finding the controls fiddly or such, but it's always because you didn't do something properly rather than the game being programmed badly. But the smoothness of how these things like those ball and chains swing round, you didn't get that very often in 1992 on the Amiga, if at all. I mean, I think the 94% score that I gave this is probably a bit high if you look at it in retrospect, but in 1992 it was probably accurate because there weren't many platform games like this around then in that time. Well, in the years since the release of this, you've ended up with games like Kid Chaos coming out, Rough and Tumble, other really good-looking, smooth platform games, and which didn't exist when this one came out. I mean, the likes of Super Frog didn't even exist when this game was released. But this is much better than the likes of Zool. But you can definitely tell that these levels haven't just been cobbled together as well either. The traps and enemy placement is definitely something that has been play tested. But no, this is still a platform game that I would thoroughly recommend. I mean, like I said before, the 94% score that I gave it would probably be a bit lower if I had scored it today, because there are platform games that have come out since this one that are a lot better. Let's get on and do the summary. As far as I'm concerned, the Addams Family is still one of the best platform games on the Amiga, and it's as good today as it was at the time of release. The simple controls, toe-tapping music and tight level design make it an absolute joy to play. It may not reach the heights of a Mario game, but it's very clear that the designers were paying attention when they played the Nintendo series. Like I said during the playtest, the 94% score that I originally gave it is probably a little bit high in retrospect. But as this was the first Amiga platform game to show that it could actually keep up with the consoles, I scored it accordingly. In the years since its original release, there have been many games released on the Amiga of similar quality or better, and that would probably bring the score down a little. I have to admit that at the time I thought it was a better game than Zool, and that's an opinion that has only strengthened as I've got older. As far as movie licenses go, this was, and still is, far better than you would normally expect. There's simply no comparison between this and something like Terminator 2 or The Godfather. Thanks to games like this one, Hook and Robocop 3, both games that I'll be covering in future episodes of the re-review, this made 1992 one of the best years ever for Ocean Software in terms of quality. This is where the Addams Family would rank in the league of best movie games ever released on the Amiga. If I was reviewing it today, it would be an easy 8 out of 10. That wraps up another episode. Thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to tell me what you think in the comments below. Maybe you owned an Amiga in the 90s and you've even played this game. If so, I'd absolutely love to hear your opinions. All previous episodes of the review are available in a playlist right here on the channel if you want to catch up on any that you've missed, and there'll be a brand new episode in 2 weeks' time. If you want a clue as to what game I'm going to be playing next, stay tuned. Don't forget that you can follow me on Twitter at UKGNZoidberg, but before you go, make sure you give us a like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on all the things that UK Gaming Network has to offer. Until next time, happy retro gaming, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.